Good morning, everyone. I think looks like a few people should still be showing up, but we're going to get started. Everyone, welcome to our Pension Coaching Connection here today. This is on Pension Administration 101. We're very excited to see everyone here today. I know your time and energy are very valuable, so we'll do our best to make sure that this is a good use of time for you. Before we get started, we do want to acknowledge that we are on Treaty 6 territory here, which is the traditional territory of Cree people, the homeland of the Métis Nation. This is a CPHR accredited webinar, so you will receive 1 CPD hour for attending, and we will be emailing all the certificates out after the webinar, so just watch for those over the coming days. First off, I want to just introduce us. We are Sutton, and this is the Sutton team. Sutton has been in business for just over 30 years, and Sutton is a second-generation local family business. There are 14 of us in total. In the past, you would have known us as a Sutton Financial Group, but a couple of years ago, we did a bit of a rebrand, and now we're known as two halves of our business, which is Sutton Wealth Planning and Sutton Benefits and Pension. And more specific to today, this is our group retirement team. We are an advisor for pension plans. First up is Tim. Tim is a certified financial planner, and he is a pension advisor and a wealth advisor as well. Tim has been with Sutton for over 10 years now and in the industry for over 16. Next up is myself. My name is Evan Rabin. I'm a pension advisor associate, and I've been with Sutton for 7 years. As part of the pension team, I provide education and assistance to all of our clients with their pension plans. I graduated from the University of Saskatchewan with a bachelor's in economics. I hold my life insurance license, my securities licensing, and I also have my QAFP, which is Qualified Associate Financial Planner. I also provide assistance to some of our wealth planning clients through a supportive role to one of our advisors, Jay Stark. And then last up here on the slide is Danae. Danae is a service associate, and she's been with Sutton for almost 2 years now. Danae coordinates the onboarding and plan management for most of our group pension plan clients. Danae graduated from the University of Regina with a bachelor's of business administration and accounting, and Danae also holds her life insurance license. She also provides a bit of support on the wealth side too, with some administrative support. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Danae to go over our agenda for today.
Okay, hi everyone. Here's what our agenda looks like for the next hour, and we'll have some polls included in the presentation to get you involved with our discussion since we can't see your faces. And for any questions you have throughout the presentation, please put them in the chat. Then we will answer as many as we can during our Q&A time. For every question asked, you will receive an entry into a draw for a prize. We're going to be drawing for 2 $25 gift cards to Prairie Meats. And after the webinar, we'll contact the winners. This is our 1231 Make It Happen list. Our goal for you in this presentation is for you to take one action. How you get there would be to take notes during the presentation, and for every potential action item you have that you could do, put a square beside. At the end, from those action items that you could do, choose 3 things you should do. From there, choose 1 thing that you will do, and that is how you will make it happen. Okay, so this is our Sutton Smart Fit process. The benefits and pension teams take our clients through this every year. This may be familiar to a number of you that are on the call, and we wanted to bring it up again as a reminder to show you how group retirement plans are included in this. The purpose of the process is to be sure that we're helping you in a valuable way and evolving with you as your company grows. So to be a bit more specific on where pension plans fit in, under strategic planning, we can do more in-depth benchmarking specific to pension plans. Then we also have a worksheet that helps you assess where you want to be in the marketplace. Under audit and assessment, we have the Sutton Employee Engagement Wheel, and I'll be going over that next. With pre-renewal planning, the pension team is more behind the scenes here. And this is when we do fee reduction negotiations with the provider and an analysis of your investment fund lineup. Last, for the annual review, we get the stewardship report from the provider, and we will meet with you on that. And in that meeting, we will also discuss enrollments and education. The annual review is particularly important because we want to connect with you on what's working well and on what changes could be made to make things even smoother on your end from a service and support standpoint. So this is the Sutton Employee Engagement Wheel. This is something we like to share with you to have you fill out because it's a really good tool to use to self-evaluate from a company perspective. Each of these internal sections represent a part of the business, and all of it works towards your mission and values. If you think of each section as a pillar, none of these pillars are standalone, and they all have some kind of crossover. For instance, with compensation, what's all included in that? Well, it's your employee's base salary, maybe some bonuses, their benefits, and pension too. And here at Sutton, we usually like to call that a total rewards package. So to dive into the pension conversation and why we're here today, we want to start off with some statistics that get you reflecting on why pension plans make a big difference for your employees. So for the first one, 44% of employers that offer group retirement benefits said employee productivity has been better than normal over the past year. So that's good to know retirement plans are tied to employee productivity. 62% of Canadians expressed overall concern about how they'll support themselves in retirement. So this is actually a concerning statistic and is something to think about. This next one is my favorite stat. 70% of Canadians say they're willing to forego a higher salary in exchange for a workplace pension plan.
Yeah, that last stat there, I really think it says a lot. It just says how highly employees actually value having a work savings plan, even over a bit of a higher salary. Later on in this presentation, I'm going to be going over some of the tax efficiency of group savings plans and just how you can enhance your plan or start a plan as a way to further compensate your employees in a tax efficient manner for both the business and your employees, and just helps make your business more attractive overall. It helps you retain and attract those right fit people.
So on the topic of pension and productivity, this graph shows the productivity of a new hire is low. Then as they become more experienced, they reach peak productivity. Then later in their career, productivity decreases. Then to tie cost of productivity into the mix, the cost of productivity of a new hire is high. Then when they're at their peak productivity, cost is at its lowest, which is a good thing. Then cost increases later in their career. So how does pension fit into this? Focusing on the end of an employee's career where their productivity is decreasing and cost is increasing, this is where a pension plan fits in well, because ideally you want to help facilitate your employees into retirement. And by doing that, it'll first help your employees retire, which is great. And second, you'll potentially save unnecessary costs on productivity. Okay, is a pension plan valued by employees? First things first, having a pension plan offered says that you, the employer, care about your employees' ability to retire. Employees need help saving. As for that stat, 62% were concerned about it. And it's because it can be hard for employees to save and feel like they're on track for retirement. Pension plan is a really good hands-off way to take a step in the right direction and give employees a sense of security. And most employees see a pension plan as part of total compensation when their employer is matching their contributions. This also shows that your business is financially strong. And of course, depending on the pension advisor you work with, it can give employees access to financial planners who can help with their retirement planning.
Yeah, having your plan be valued is one of the most important factors in having a pension plan at all, right? A plan that isn't valued isn't going to have the impact that you want. It's not going to be appreciated by your employees, and it's not going to make that difference. Helping your employees realize the value of your plan is one of those things that we focus on here at Sutton, either through, and mostly that's going to be through education, helping people when they're getting onto the plan or any of our education sessions in the future, just really driving home how important their plan is. So we're gonna bring up a quick poll here for everyone. And what we want to know is for your business, what is your number one reason for either having or wanting to set up a group retirement savings plans? There's no right or wrong answers here. And every business is different, and every business has different reasons for doing what they do, either what they choose with their pension plan or their benefits, or any of those side benefits like flexible hours or anything like that. So just give this a little bit of thoughts, and I want to see, just curious how everyone's going to respond here. And yeah, so that's pretty overwhelming. And it's really tying into attract, retain, and reward, right? You want the right people to come on, and you want to keep those right people. And that is definitely something we see, of course, number one reason normally, and definitely fitting the statistics here. So yeah, thanks everyone for sharing there.
Okay, that was a really good poll. We want to highlight all the reasons why it's a benefit to have a group retirement plan. So like most of you chose, attract, retain, and reward employees is a big reason, one of the main ones for you guys on the call. So that's pretty cool. And, you know, some of you could have employees that worked with you for over 20 years. So it is a really good way to reward the employees for their loyalty. It also enhances company culture, which plays into your mission and values. And you can think back to the employee engagement wheel where it's all tied together. And it's a great way to provide tax effective compensation for both the employer and the employees. And like Evan said, he'll go over that later on in the presentation.
Now we're going to start digging into some of the meat, and we're going to start talking about fees. Fees are such a big topic, and a lot of times it's not understood very well what that even means. So today I want to cover fees, specifically investment management fees. And I want to talk about how they work and how often they should be reviewed. And the reason that I say I'm talking or focusing on investment management fees is because that's mostly the only type of fee that you're going to see in your plan. Most group retirement or pension plans don't have any annual fees. There's no monthly fees. There's no fees to start up, no fees on your deposits when you put in money. There's no real fees as part of the plan other than these investment management fees. So what an investment management fee, it's just a fee on the investment themselves and tends to be noted as a percent. So just for a quick example, if an investment has a 1% investment management fee, that means that it would be a 1% fee on the entire amount of their investment through the calendar year, just to pay for any sort of cost to run the pension and run the investments. This does directly impact returns. So if, for example, a fund would have normally gotten a 10% return, if it had a 1% fee, the end result is going to be a 9% return. So of course, right, you're still getting a good return, but fees do directly impact returns. Investment management fees, they pay for everything to do with the plan. So you can see here, it pays for everything with your pension provider. So this would be paying for the fund managers who run the actual funds, or any sort of trading costs or other investment costs involved, such as like currency. It pays for your support as well. So that's paying for your personal representative with your pension provider, as well as back office administrative support. And then of course, technology. They're always working on improving their websites and the tools that they can offer. So that's everything to do with the website or developing apps as well. So that just makes it easy for people to use. Investment management fees also pay for the pension advisor team to help you out with your plan. So that pays for all the services and support that they provide, whether that's through help with enrollments or enrollment processing or education, either when it's onboarding or throughout just regular every year or so, and just for the advice that we give on the plan itself. So that's our annual reviews and going through that kind of process. So investment management fees are always going to be different between different plans. And that's because there's a lot of factors that affect fees. And most of them relate to kind of like how big the plan is, right? I call it the Costco effect. The bigger the plan, the more people, the more money, the lower that normally investment management fees can be negotiated. So some of these factors here, you can see how long the plan has been in effect, just because that normally means it's a bit longer and more stable. Cash flow, what cash flow means is how much is deposited into the plan every single year. And that's from both the employer and the employee. So that's kind of combined. And that's, so the larger the cash flow, the lower the fees. The assets that are in the plan also impact fees. So the more that is saved in the plan right now, the lower the fees normally. Turnover also has an impact. So some businesses are in maybe an industry that has higher than normal turnover, and that tends to mean that their fees are going to be just a little bit higher. It's more processing for onboarding, lots more onboarding, processing of forms there, and terminations at the end, and just tends to be more, I don't know, lots of call center questions from employees. But the higher the turnover, tends to be higher fees. And then the last factor here you can see is cash flow per member. So high cash flow is always important, but if you have a high cash flow on even a per member basis, that will also lead to lower fees as well. So now I want to talk about, when I say compensation, I'm specifically referring to what your pension advisor is paid. So it's compensation for your advisor who's helping you. This isn't talked about a lot sometimes, and I do think it's important for everyone to understand and know how it works. So I want to just go through today how compensation does work, some examples of what normal setups are, and I want to show how compensation does affect fees directly, because we kind of, as I mentioned before, investment management fees pay for the compensation. So compensation is directly impacting those fees. So there's three main ways that compensation for an advisor is set up. It can be through cash flow. So that would normally be a % of cash flow. So a % of the annual deposits. It could be on assets. And again, it's going to be a % of assets in the plan. Transfer is the third option here, and you're not going to see it as often because it tends to come up when a plan is making a big change from moving from one pension provider to another. There's a lot of work that goes into that, a lot of work up front, enrolling, education of employees, just lots of processing in general. So sometimes there's a little bit of transfer compensation built in too, just to acknowledge that there's a lot of work that's going into this one-time thing. And to just make sure that everyone is as clear as possible on how compensation works, I'm going to go through a couple of examples here using the same numbers. So the numbers we're going to go off of is, let's just picture a business who has a pension plan. Inside that plan, we'll say that there's $500,000 in current assets and then $150,000 in cash flow. So that's how much is being saved every single year. So on the left side, we're going to have the cash flow example. And let's just say the advisor's cash flow is set up as 3%. So that means their compensation is 3% on cash flow. So it is as simple as looking at what that annual cash flow is, the annual deposits, and then taking 3% of that number. So if you take 3% of 150,000, that means the advisor's compensation for the year will be $4,500. So I have at the bottom, of course, compensation is directly impacting investment management fees, but how cash flow impacts the fees isn't clear by itself. This is something that needs to be calculated. The pension provider has formulas in the background that if the bigger the plan, the less of an impact the cash flow will have. So it's just not, it's hard to determine, and it changes slowly year by year as your plan gets bigger. So I just kind of wanted to note that the impact isn't clear, but when the smaller your plan is, the more efficient it tends to be on fees compared to assets. So on the right side, we're going to use the asset-based compensation. So it's the same numbers, but instead we're going to say the advisor gets paid 0.5% on assets is what their compensation is set up as. So we have the $500,000 in assets in the plan. And so it's as easy as taking 0.5% of that amount. So 0.5% of 500,000 means the advisor's compensation on this plan would be $2,500. The impact on investment management fees is very clear in this scenario. Whenever you have asset-based compensation, it's just simply the exact same. So if you have 0.5% is the compensation, it's increasing those investment management fees by exactly 0.5%. asset-based compensation tends to be used the more mature your plan is. So if your plan has been in place for sometimes 10 to 15 years, that's when asset-based compensation starts making more sense from the impact on fees compared to cash flow. So first, before I go through this slide, I want to bring up another poll here. So I've talked about just fees in general and how they work in compensation. What I want to know is, when was the last time that your business had your group savings plan fees reviewed? So normally this happens, it can happen through the annual review process. And some of you might not quite know the answer to this question, right? Because sometimes it's not talked about. Sometimes it happens in the background and you don't even know. So looks like everyone answered. And so that's a good split there. It looks like most of you who have a plan are answering that it's been within the past 2 years, which is perfect. That means that you and or your advisor are on top of things, and it's been reviewed regularly, so that's perfect. So it is your responsibility to look out for your plan members. If your plan fees aren't being reviewed on a regular basis, you could just be costing your employees more in your investment management fees than you realize. It's not your responsibility as the business owner or plan administrator to just know if the fees are right or not. But you should know if your fee reviews are being done, and just looked at a regular basis. So I have an example here. We started working with a local manufacturing firm, and their plan was set up over 10 years ago. They set it up back then, and they haven't really thought about it since. And when they initially set it up, their fees were set at 2.4%. When we started working with them, though, a couple of years ago, I just looking at the assets and the cash flow, I just knew that was out of line now. It just wasn't appropriate, and it's just stuck out as it should be looked at and reduced. So it kind of looked like it had never been looked at before. So we went to the pension provider, got it requoted and negotiated on the fee. And then after all of that, it came back that we could get the fee down to 1.4%. Right, so that's a full 1% reduction in fees, which is actually huge. A 1% reduction in fees equals directly a 1% higher return on every single investment that every employee is in. Right, that makes it a big deal in the long run. With regular reviewing, you'd probably see a more normal, maybe a 0.25% to 0.5% reduction on a good review. But it's just important to review over time to make sure you're trying to keep those fees as in line as possible. Some people kind of ask, when would be the right time, or how often should you be reviewing your fees? And I always say you should review it if there's ever any material changes. So if your business ever is growing a lot, or your plan has been in effect for a lot, or just any of those factors that we talked about, if they change a lot, it might be a good prompt to review. Other than that, a good rule of thumb is every 3 to 5 years. It's good to look more seriously at it and get it requoted. So here, I want to talk about advice and support a bit. So for both you and your employees, we want you to know what type of advice and support that both your pension provider and your pension advisor can help you with. Is it clear to you who you go to with certain issues? Do you go to your pension advisor or to the provider with an issue? And that's what we're here to help for. We want to help make that clear. And if you're ever in a situation where you don't know where you're supposed to go with a situation or a question, as your advisor, we want to be there as your first point of contact in those uncertain situations.
And from an employee perspective, we want them to know that they can reach out to us at any time. You know, Tim jokes here in the office about water cooler talk because it's typically not the best source of information. But the purpose is that we want your employees not feeling lost and not knowing who to talk to about their pension plan, and that we are here and available to meet with them to discuss any concerns they might have. And at the end of the day, we want to be your pension specialist. On to education. So education for your employees is an important piece for a few different reasons, because We want to help them, number one, see the value in having a pension plan offered to them. Two, we want them to become more financially savvy. And three, we want them to actually plan for retirement. As for the questions on the screen, your employees may not have all the resources to find the answers, and it could be overwhelming too. And even though we normally speak specifically about the group savings plans, we can also help with these kinds of questions.
Yeah, and just to be clear, when we say education, we can mean both when an employee's first join the plan, educating them on how the plan works and just why it's such a great thing, or education down the road through the years. Education is just such a key piece of having a pension, both to ensure that your plan is being valued, but also to maximize your impact and maximize the impact that your plan is having on both your business and all of your employees. Some topics you might not even know that you can get help with or education on, such as things relating to lawyers and wills or estates, and insurance topics like life insurance and disability insurance. Again, one of the things we focus on here at Sutton is working with you to provide all your employees with the education they need.
Okay, so we're going to start with a poll again. So what's your most preferred method of education for your employees? There's in-person presentations, live virtual webinars like this one, recorded video sessions, and newsletters or email articles. There could be more, but we just chose these four for right now. It's always exciting to know what you guys are going to pick, so. Okay, awesome. In person, wow, there's actually more live virtual webinars. That's actually quite cool. Awesome, thanks you guys. Okay, so as for education specifically on a group retirement plan, we want to help your employees in the way that works best for them, like what Evan said. Depending on the industry your business is in, it may require different methods of communication, and that's okay too. And with some of the questions we want to consider is how often or when is the best time for these education sessions, what topics are most important that we cover, or who is all involved.
And sometimes you're going to find that you'll have employees come to you with complex situations or questions they're just not comfortable asking around other people in the business. And it's not your responsibility to handle these kind of situations. So having an experienced advisor as a resource for these situations and these kind of employees is invaluable. All right, so now I want to quickly cover the plan rules. What I'm referring to are how the plan can be set up, but these kind of things can always be changed anytime at all, depending on what's important for your business, because sometimes your business needs can change as well. So I'm going to review waiting period and vesting period. I'm going to talk about withdrawal restrictions, as well as penalties and consequences, how part-time and spousal plans work, as well as I'm going to review matching as well, which will probably be the biggest topic. So for waiting and vesting period, you can see the most common waiting periods for a pension plan tend to be 6 months and 12 months, but I've seen as low as 0 months, which means immediately eligible to join the plan, or as long as 2 years. It's really uncommon to have it too short because that can just be a lot of work for the business, right? If you have early turnover, you've already enrolled them, and you have to terminate them, make sure the funds get to them. All of that is kind of a cost. So you don't want to have it too early, but you also don't want to have it too long. A waiting period of 2 years, that could make the plan just not very attractive for all of your employees, right? Because they join your business and know that 2 full years, right, that's so long out, is the plan even going to matter to them? So they just might not value the plan as much if it's that long. So for vesting period, I'm going to quickly explain first what it is. So what a vesting period means is that it's the period of time that an employee has to be on the plan before the business's contributions are fully owned by them. So vesting periods tend to be either 1 or 2 years. And vesting periods kind of tie into waiting period as well, because just imagine you have a 1-year waiting period and then a 2-year vesting period. And depending on the definition of vesting period, that could be 3 full years before an employee is vested. because they have to wait 1 year to join the plan, and then vesting period of 2 years of plan membership. So if you have both of these, sometimes you just want to consider how they're working together and make sure that they're not working against the plan and making it not very attractive for your employees. So when you talk about withdrawal restrictions, I just want to start off by noting that for registered pension plans, which is the RPP, they're always going to be locked in and not allow withdrawals. So this is simply a fact of all pension plans, and it's not something you have to make any decisions on or have to think about really. It's just going to be a fact. For the other option here, the DPSP stands for Deferred Profit Sharing Plan, and that's a choice for you. And it's very common to restrict withdrawals. So I just kind of wanted to note there that again, it is an option just in case you're not aware. For the group RSP component, if you have a group RSP or a combination plan between the deferred profit sharing plan and a group RSP, any money that goes into the group RSP, you can't really restrict withdrawals. Employees always own that money. So if they really want to withdraw it, they're going to be able to. What you can do instead is think about if you want any sort of penalties or consequences set in place. One example of that is something like, let's just say they withdraw for an unapproved use, which I'll go over shortly. That would mean that you could set up a consequence of, we will stop matching for 6 months. Just something to help encourage them to treat their plan like it's meant to be treated for retirement savings and help them make good decisions. So there are some good reasons that they can withdraw from their group RSPs, and that would be 2 government programs called first-time homebuyers to help with a down payment for their first house, or their lifelong learning plan. So both of those are very healthy options that help your employees progress in life in some way. And those are always good options to have, and we tend to always allow those for withdrawals. For part-time and spousal, whether or not you allow part-time employees to join your plan kind of depends on how important they are to your business. So just picture a business that just has seasonal part-time employees. Maybe they're just summer workers. They come and go each year and they're not really as essential to your business. You probably don't want to be allowing those part-time workers on the plan. But if your business has potentially long-term, multi-year part-time employees, they're obviously very important to your business. They might be essential, and you might want to try and retain and reward them as well. So I would, in those kind of situations, maybe recommend thinking about allowing part-time to join the plan too. So for spousal plans, this just means allowing spousal RRSPs. And we tend to recommend that you do allow these if you have the option. Some employees will work with financial advisors who will help them with planning and retirement planning with regards to taxes. And spousal RSPs are just an important part of the equation, especially just having the ability to make them. So that's something that we always recommend allow. And then if they don't have any resource, we're here to also help them understand what it is and if it makes sense for them. Now we're going to talk about matching, and this is the big topic. Matching is how much is the business going to put into the plan and how are they going to do it? And we do understand, of course, matching is cash flow dependent, right? It's coming from the business to compensate your employees. So the first thing you want to think about is, what is the purpose of your plan? Do you want to attract? Do you want to retain? Do you want to stand out from the crowd? Or do you just want to have something? Something so you're not falling too far behind maybe. And what you want to always think about is, how can you best make use of your cash flow to optimize your plan and still potentially make the plan make sense and be valued, but not go over what you have available for cash flow. So I'm going to start off by just talking about the most common things you need to decide about with matching is if you're going to match a % of salary or match just a fixed dollar amount. And basically 100% of the time, I would recommend thinking about matching a % of salary. And the reason for this is that salaries increase year over year, either in small amounts or big amounts, but they do increase over time. When you set it up as a % of salary, what that means is that their savings to their plan is also increasing automatically over time. And that's just so important. As you get closer to retirement, you do want to be increasing your savings slowly because over time, you're probably going to want to spend a little more in retirement too. And so it's just naturally makes a lot of sense. When you set it up as just a fixed dollar amount, let's just say $50, over time, year after year, your plan is kind of getting a little bit weaker because you're not saving anymore, you're not matching anymore. And with inflation, that same $50 just means less and less over time. So another thing to consider when you talk about matching is how much do you want to match from a ratio wise. So the most common, of course, is matching 1-to-1. So this means that maybe they would put in 2% and you would match 2% as well. So you're kind of doubling their money. It's a huge benefit to employees still, and it's the most common way that plans are set up. But maybe you have a business where you want to start a plan where you're a little more cash flow restricted. So you can match less than 1-to-1 as well. So in this, I have written down 50%. So an example of that is the employee would contribute 2% and you would just match 1, right? So you're still giving them basically a 50% return on the deposit. It's still a lot of value to that. It'd be a little less attractive, but it's really going to help you with your cash flow if that's a consideration. And the last one, if you really want to stand out, you can match more than 2-to-1. So a lot of the big pension plans, if you're looking at some of the government ones, or maybe big corporations like Nutrien, a lot of them do have more than 1-to-1 matching in some way. So it might not be 2-to-1, but my example here, if you consider a 2-to-1, what that means is that an employee, they would contribute 2% and you would match 4%. Right, so you're not only doubling their money, you're kind of tripling it. It's just a huge benefit. It will certainly make you stand out a lot. So if your goal is to, for example, maybe you want to attract or retain those right people, this is a great way to try and target them and do that. And then last here, you can contribute a portion unmatched or have it not matter what the employee saves. So that would be, an example would be, the business would save 2% for the employee, regardless of whether or not they choose to save anything on their own. So of course, that's just straight out free money. There's no consequence for the employee. It's only a benefit, and it'll of course be very attractive and help you stand out. All of these, you can also tend to do a combination as well. So let's use that last one as an example. You could do 2% contribution, don't care about matching. And then on top of that, maybe do a 3% match. So the end result of that would be the employee saves 3%, you'll match 3% plus put in 2. So that's kind of 5%. So it's kind of similar to overmatching, but it works a little different in practice, and just another tool to have if you need to stand out. Some other considerations to have: if your business is really reliant on maybe a certain role or a certain group, maybe you're looking for engineers or you're trying to keep your management staff, you can have the plan matching set up different for different groups. Because of course, what we want your plan to work for what your business needs as well. So if your needs, you need to target those groups, you can set up different, potentially more attractive matching for certain groups. And another thing you can do, you can tier your matching depending on how long employees have been working for your business. So this could mean something like, if they've been with you for 2 years, they get a 3% match. If they've been with you for 3 years, they get a 4% match. Once they've been there for 5 years, they get a 5% match. So those long-term employees, those are exactly the kind of people you want to keep, right? They've been with you for that long, and having a tiered matching will automatically increase their compensation, automatically make this plan more attractive, and just work harder and harder to retain those long-term employees. So if you remember back to that statistic where I talked about 70% of employees would actually value some pension plan over salary. And I wanted to talk about how giving an employee either a new pension plan or increasing compensation is a very cost or cash flow efficient way for the business, and also tax efficient for employees. So this is a very simple example of, we're going to have a company here who has 30 employees with a combined payroll of $1 million salary. And they're considering, they want to increase compensation by 4%. So in this first topic, the top part, we're looking at the company's perspective. So you can see when they do it through wages or just a strict salary increase, they're doing that $40,000 increase in salary. but they're also attracting CPP, attracting EI, potentially paying vacation pay on top of that, and workers' comp, right? There's all of these payroll taxes that are being attracted, which means this 4% increase in salary has a higher than 4% increase cost, right? That's an extra just over $6,000 that is costing the business. When you consider instead either starting a registered pension plan or just increasing your matching in some way, you're not attracting any of those payroll taxes. So you can do this exact same, instead of $40,000 salary, $40,000 in compensation through a pension plan, and you're not attracting any payroll taxes whatsoever. So your cost is exactly $40,000, right? Just much more efficient for the business. From the employee's perspective, when you look at the bottom, you can see it's also can be attractive for the employee. So through a salary, if it was $40,000 in salary, there's a lot of just normal income taxes. So we have in this example, it's 30% in income taxes, but also they're paying CPP, they're paying EI on it as well. So their end results, out of that $40,000, they're only ending up with $25,000 in their pocket. So it's still, of course, a salary increase, they're going to appreciate it, but you can see just how much is lost to taxes. Whereas when you look at instead getting that entire amount through a pension plan, again, they get that full $40,000. So I just wanted to show this slide as just maybe plant a seed that you can consider incorporating pension plan starting or increases when you think about compensation reviews, and you can just maybe find a more efficient or cost-effective way to compensate your employees. Now we're going to get into something that I find a lot of fun, everything to do with the investment fund lineups of a plan. So unfortunately today, I'm not going to be digging too deep into the specifics of all the different types of investments and what to think about. But one thing you do want to make sure is that you have options available to suit the needs of all your plan members. So every business is different. So sometimes the investment options can be different for plans as well. Sometimes we only want to offer certain funds, and it all depends on your plan need and your employee base as well. And when we're thinking about your investment fund lineup and reviewing it, we're reviewing the options that are available, what options are out there, and trying to think about and talk through with you if your investment fund lineup is appropriate and is it working for your plan and plan members. And when I say is it working, I'm not even just talking about what options are available. I'm talking about, are the options being used appropriately by everyone in the plan? And to kind of illustrate that last point, I have an example here, an example of a company that we had a concern maybe how the funds are being used. So it's one company we work with. They're a food production firm, and they've had a plan in place for about 9 years now. So when we first started working with them on our initial review, we noticed the fund lineup was, honestly, it was a pretty good mixture. It could use a little updating. Maybe a couple of the funds wouldn't be what we'd recommend, but not a big deal overall. And then on closer look, when we dug into how the money was being invested, it kind of raised some red flags for us. The most concerning thing was that a large amount of their employees were saving all of their money into what's called a money market fund. So just to make sure everyone knows what that means, it's basically a high interest savings account. So of course we know high interest savings accounts haven't really given much of a return at all for quite a long time now. So a lot of these employees were investing in a high interest savings account essentially that was giving them, after fees, a negative return. Right, so you can just see from hearing that, you can tell how it just hurts everyone who's in these investments. They're missing out on any sort of returns, or they're losing a little bit of money. And that's due to, partially due to a lack of education and guidance when they're first getting onto the plan, and potentially the enrollment process, but also just a lack of review of the funds and how they were being used. Right, so this is it just shows the importance of having a trusted pension advisor helping you out, so you're not missing out on little things like this that can have a huge impact on all of your employees. One other thing that commonly stands out when we review fund lineups and how they're being used is the amount of people in the default investment. So whenever we see a plan that has potentially a large majority of people all in the default, that also is speaking to maybe they have a lack of support when they're first getting on or a lack of education. And it just shows that some additional support is needed there. And so then we know to focus on that. So we've talked a bit about reviewing your fees and how that works. But on top of your fees, you also want to regularly review who your pension provider is. There's lots of options out there, lots of really big, strong companies, trustworthy companies that we can use. And you can see on this slide that the big four are kind of up there. There's Manulife, Canada Life, Industrial Alliance, and Sun Life are all the biggest providers. And why you want to review your pension provider is you can review your investment fees with one provider, and you kind of have to accept what they're saying to an extent. But when you review or look outside of your one provider, then you really get an idea of making sure that your fees are in line, that they're exactly where they should be. Sometimes providers also come out with enhanced services or resources that some of the other ones don't have. One example is I know that Canada Life recently has come out with what they call, I think it's a student loan repayment program. And depending on your business, that could be a great resource and help if you're looking for younger people out of university. It could be absolutely perfect for your plan. Sometimes having your benefits plan and pension plan with the same company can have benefits too. So it might be a small benefit, but there can be coordination through the website or the apps, having everyone all in one place. But also it can save your business a little bit of money on things like your benefits premiums, just by having them both with the same provider. So reviewing your provider every so often, I think, is just important to think about.
Okay, so there's many questions to consider about enrollment, and the first and most important question would be, do you have an enrollment process? Having a process is big for communication, and you want to be consistent to get the employees enrolled at the proper time. And of course, a process will help you do that. It's important to communicate effectively with them on what they're enrolling in. So when we do a group presentation for enrollments, whether that's a webinar or in person, there's a portion of education in that enrollment session, and that's to explain exactly what they're enrolling in and why. And this is something we think is really meaningful and is a big value to your employees. And with that, do you prefer paper or online enrollment? Again, it may depend on the type of industry you're in. And as for support from your pension advisor with enrollments, we want to find out what works best for you and your employees and help support that. We have enrollment recordings, email templates, and there's also online enrollment that we can get set up as well. Really, at the end of the day, getting employees enrolled into the group savings fund is the first step to showing your employees that you care about their ability to retire, and they will ultimately see the value that it has.
So I want to take this chance just to encourage people. Anything that we've covered so far, if there's been any questions that you have top of mind or you want to ask, I just encourage everyone to send them to us in the chat box. When you send the chat, when you send it to hosts and panelists, only we'll see it. So it's not going to be shared with anyone else. And yeah, I know that lots of people have more questions, and just remember, any questions you submit, you're going to be entered to that draw. So I want to talk next about, this ties in perfectly to Danae talking about enrollments and just how important it is to have a thorough process and understanding the risks and liabilities associated with potentially not having that process. And I want to talk right now about employees declining to participate in a plan. So this is employees declining to participate is a bit of a red flag, but it does happen occasionally. So you want to know what to do when it happens. We had one business come to us with an issue. They had an employee that had been with them for 5 years who wanted to join the pension. This employee was eligible at the 1-year mark. That's what the waiting period is set. So they brought it up then, met with the employee, and the employee declined participating. So like I said, a little bit of a red flag, but it does happen occasionally. So I want to bring up another poll here and see, what would you all do in the situation? When you have an employee declining to participate in this plan, which is obviously a large benefit to them, right? It's increasing their compensation. They're declining compensation. So what would you do? There's other alternatives outside of what we said here that would work. And these are just some of the options that we think that you can maybe consider in this kind of situation. I'll just give everyone a second just to think about that. Okay. Yeah, it's quite the split here, but I think everyone is on a great track. All of these are important things that you can do to help. Having a written record is a great idea, and that's probably the number one thing that we recommend. But tying in multiple of these options into your process is just gonna help both you and your employees, because you're gonna really drive home how important this decision is and how bad it is to be declining. So yeah, thanks everyone for answering that poll. So going back to my little story here, that employee that was at the 5-year mark, who was eligible at the 1-year mark, this employee was coming back to the business saying that they were never told about their pension plan. They were saying they weren't told, or they didn't have it explained to them properly. So there was a definite concern about liability here, because that's 4 years of matched savings, 4 years of growth that were being talked about. And there was no written record of anything happening, and they had never talked to this employee again through the years. So I'm just trying to drive home that employees declining participating is a big deal. In the end, a retirement plan, when it's being matched, it's kind of like free money. It's extra compensation. So employees turning down money is a big decision. So just to help cement, that's very important, and to protect yourself, we really recommend at the least having something in writing and considering some of those other options as well. So this slide, this is going to be a little bit of a summary on everything we covered. With work savings plans, you might have heard of something called the CAP guidelines, which means capital accumulation plan. And that itself just means any sort of plan that accumulates money. So any sort of work savings plan, any sort of retirement savings plan. The basis of the CAP guidelines is ensuring that you as the business and the plan administrator are doing your due diligence to ensure that your employees are being taken care of. So everything that we covered today mostly touches on the CAP guidelines in some way, right? You want to be reviewing your fees, you want to understand, have a good enrollment process. Everything is an important piece of the puzzle. So if you and your pension advisor are following through on lots of this, you're thinking about it, you're probably already in a place where you're fulfilling all of your responsibilities. Having a good pension advisor will help you a lot in this respect, and you almost really won't have to think about it very much because it's being taken care of through their support with you. But if you're unsure of whether or not you're fulfilling your needs of these CAP guidelines, this is something that we can help talk you through as well. So please feel free to reach out to us about that. Okay, so now we're going to go through our question and answer section, and I do know that there's some questions here. So let's just give me 1 second. So I'm going to pick out, so one of the questions here today is, can pension plan participation be mandatory by the employer? That's a great question, and the answer to that for the most part is yes, because of course, if you write participation into an employment contract, you're basically saying, yes, it's a condition of employment that you join the pension plan. You can also set it up as a requirement outside of a formal employment contract. It's going to be less strong though. And we've had people, we do have mandatory pension plans that it's mandatory to participate, and we've had employees fight against it and they have waived participating. So that does happen. And so to have that strongest protection and make it the most mandatory, you want to have it probably written in your employment contract. But so the answer to that is mostly yes, we can set it up to be mandatory. And I almost encourage you to do that as an option, because this is a big benefit. We don't want employees making the wrong decision and opting out. So great question. Thanks for that there. Let's see. I have another question here. It's a little longer, so just give me a second for this one. It's a great question, and the question is mostly centered on what to do if you want to adjust your pension plan in the future. So just consider, we talked about all of these rules that you can consider, like waiting period, vesting period, matching, all of that kind of stuff. And they're kind of asking, how do you incorporate doing these increases without potentially negatively impacting people who are already on the plan? Or just how do you treat people who have already met, if you're thinking about maybe a tiered matching system? Let's just say you have just a base of 3% now, and you want to introduce tiers so that it potentially increases. And just how do you impact that? So when I talk through businesses on how to change things in their pension plan or enhance the plan in some way, my main focus is always on, we never want any employees to feel bad about the change. There can be some little exceptions, but just as a general rule of thumb, if something is going to make someone feel bad, we want to keep that in mind, and we can account for that. So in an example where we have employees that you're introducing a matching period, maybe it was starting at 3%, and at 3 years it goes up, and at 5 years it goes up. I would encourage the business to consider the impact on your cash flow before you make that formal decision, so that everyone who would have been eligible based off of years of service, they're immediately increased to this increased matching to fit the plan. If anyone would be negatively impacted, let's just say your business has a flat 4% matching, and you're trying to change it so that between 1 and 3 years, it's 3%, right? It's a little bit lower, and then it goes up to 4% at 3 years, then maybe it goes up even higher at 5. So if someone would be negatively impacted, I would tend to recommend waiving them because businesses, you have a lot of flexibility on what you make happen in a plan. So we can set up the rules and have it apply to just future employees. We would never downgrade someone and make them feel bad. So we can always, again, in those one-offs, waive, just make sure everyone was okay with all the changes. So thank you for that. That's also a great question. Let's see, please. Yeah, I see lots of people having more questions now, which is great. Let's see. So I have a question here on someone here has employees who aren't permanent residents of Canada, but I'm assuming that they are paying tax in Canada and gaining RSP room in Canada. So the question is, can employees who aren't permanent residents, can they join a pension plan? So the answer to that is yes. So if someone can gain our RSP room, that means they're eligible for group savings plans and pension plans as well. The thing to consider is that when someone is first coming to Canada, if they haven't worked for any years in the past, so they have 0 RSP room, they're not going to be able to join for that first year. They're going to probably, even if they're eligible, because they have no RSP room, they can't join because that's called an overcontribution. There will be penalties for that. But in future years, once they've gained that RSP room from working for potentially you for that first year, then they can join because then they have the room to support these contributions. So thank you for that question as well. And I think I'm just going to do one more because I want to, I know that everyone's time here is valuable and we're getting close to where we wanted. So just one more question and then I'll let everyone out. Not let you out, move on to the next slide. Let's see. Okay, I'm going to do my last question. Someone here asked, who should they contact if they want to set up an education session for their employees? So the answer to that is, if you're working with a pension advisor, they would be your best bet. Some of the pension providers can also help you coordinate education sessions directly through them. So if you don't have an advisor, that's also an option for you. When you go to your advisor, they'll be able to go also to the pension provider if it's appropriate. If that's the best route, they can coordinate with the pension provider as well. If you don't have a pension advisor, I do recommend that there's a lot of value in it, and I would encourage you to do that, to look for one. But so your first route would be pension advisor, and second, you can talk to your provider as well. So great question there. Thank you for that. And there was a couple more questions that were asked at least. that I didn't have a time to get to. So if you asked a question and I didn't answer it, or you have any questions still before the end of the presentation, you can still submit them. We'll still count any further questions for the draws. We will connect with everyone after this presentation to answer any questions we didn't get to. So thank you everyone for all your questions. That was great.
Okay, and I'll just try and be quick here. We just want to show you this. This is an exciting announcement for us. It's a new pension article that our pension team wrote here. It's called 7 Common Challenges Employers Have with Their Group Retirement Plan. So we touched on some of these challenges today, but we want to give you the opportunity to request a copy. So we'll have a poll here on the screen. And if you'd like to opt in, just click yes, and we'll send that out with the certificate. And then, of course, your action item could be reading it. Let's give you guys a minute here.
And just so everyone knows, this article, it doesn't cover only the exact same things we talked about today. So even if you were paying very close attention through everything that we went through, I still think that you're going to find a lot of value in this article. Great, so thanks for everyone answering that. And yeah, so we're here at the end of our presentation, and what we want is we want for everyone here to take action. In the beginning of the presentation, Dinesh challenged you all to take your notes, do up your make it happen list. So hopefully you have those 3 things that you should do and 1 thing that you will do. So we have some next steps that we have here today. And number 1, we want you to start today. So if anything that we went through, you felt that was an area that needed to be looked at or covered, or anything, just a concern you might have, we encourage you not to put it off. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is right now. If you're unsure of who to go to with any concerns or questions about anything that we covered today, please feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to help go through anything you might need. Number 2, hire a specialist. So the industry has been drastically changing through the years, and as your business grows and evolves, you need someone to grow with you as well. This isn't a time to hire a generalist or to try and do it yourself. There's so much that you need to think about. If you don't feel like you have the support you want for your plan, feel free to reach out to us again as well. We'd be happy to discuss your own situation with you and see how we can help out. Number 3, evaluate your plan and objectives. So this is develop your written vision specifically for your pension plan. What is your desired position in the market? Do you want to be a leader? Do you want to be the standout plan? Just what do you want to accomplish? Do you have a plan to get to where you want to be? And if there are any gaps in this vision, do you have a plan to address them? Number 4 is integrating into your strategic plan. So this is integrating into your planning about total compensation. So you don't want to view your group savings in isolation. They're a part of the bigger picture. And this goes back to how highly valued pension plans are, which we went through earlier. And when I went through talking about how you can incorporate starting a plan or increasing contributions as compensation increases. And number 5, like Nike says, just do it. We can help you put your plan into action and help you close any gaps that you might feel there are in your understanding or how your plan is currently being managed. So we're going to bring up the last poll of our presentation here. This isn't one we're going to share. If you would like to discuss anything we covered today, or if you'd like to discuss your plan, just any questions in general, please let us know if you would like a meeting with us. And if you select yes, we'll be in touch after the presentation to connect and make sure we can help you with whatever your needs are. So I'll just give everyone a second to answer that, and then we will be able to close off.
Okay, so we're getting to the end here. But before you go, we just want to share with you our Smart Perks. They're discounts from local businesses here that we've partnered with, and they're exclusive to you, your employees, and their families as well. So if you're interested in that, you can head over to our website, or if you even just type in Sutton Smart Perks into Google, it should pop up there, and you can find what kind of discounts that you can get with these providers. So we just thank you for jumping on today and tuning into our pension webinar, and you'll be hearing from us. So thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. Everyone have a good rest of your day.